Hello and welcome to Movers and Shakers. I'm Ken Miller. Today I'm joined by Leavenworth County Attorney Todd Thompson. Todd, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
It's the first time we've had you on the video, on the show here. So let's start out with some information about who you are and how you came to be Leavenworth County Attorney. You've been around for a while. I mean, I've known you for a while.
Yeah.
But just talk a little bit about the background.
Sure. My family has been in the community since the 1840s. My grandfather had a dealership in Lansing and then in Leavenworth, a car dealership. His name was Bert Collard. My dad actually had a concrete business, Thompson Concrete. And then I went to the Leavenworth schools and went to KU and Washburn Law and came here to be an assistant county attorney. And at some point, I saw a need and I had a lot of community support, so I decided to run. Actually, right about the same time, my dad passed away in that December, and then May, right before I announced, my mom had passed away, and throughout the campaign, my car broke down. I had to get a new car. My dog died.
Oh man!
And so a series of of basically almost a bad country song before I actually then got elected in 2008, and I took over in 2009. So, been going ever since.
Okay. All right, so fast forward to 2023.
Sure.
So when it comes to prosecution of crimes in the county, and this is more of a philosophical question maybe, but what kind of trends are you seeing? And we'll start with troubling, but I also want to know promising trends that you're seeing, and not just statistically, but maybe anecdotally as well.
Okay, well, yeah, some of the things, one of the bigger issues that we're seeing is fentanyl, and it is really become a scourge of what we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Much different than any other drug that we've seen. When I first started, we were dealing with a lot of cocaine and crack, and that's pretty much dissipated. Marijuana has always been a constant, and that's a big debate about what's going to happen in the legislature and what's happening nationally with that.
And we've got it next door in Missouri now.
Right.
Right.
But what the different in opioids, and people weren't paying attention to pill abuse. We've seen the celebrities that had died far back, and one of the most prominent started was like Elvis even,
Mm-hmm.
but then in the last year or so, fentanyl has just been the touch of it has just been killing people, which is much different than what we have seen in other drugs, and it's much more scary effect. We have seen at least in this county, we've seen a trend of crime going down statistically. When I took office the first couple of years, we saw a trend in Leavenworth of crime going down 11% a couple of years in a row. And then for the last 5 years, we've seen the percentage of crime going down 10 to 14 to 15%. And so that's been really a great thing, I think. It's due to the credit of our law enforcement and due to the credit the team I get to work with every day. But we are seeing some more violent crime, and and that's what we've been seeing kind of like from COVID, post-COVID. And I don't know if that's just people being stuck inside so much, or just not dealing with like what has happened. But
domestics, is that what you see?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things about COVID that we saw is we saw a trend for those couple of years of less domestic reports and less child crime and child abuse reports. And it's not because we don't think they weren't happening. It was because they weren't getting out into the public for others to be able to know or report.
I see.
Schools would see a kid come in, and if they could tell that they had a bruising or hunger or whatever, they could kind of start vetting what was going on, or students would tell them what was happening. But when they're just in their little bubble, in their home, or wherever it might be, we don't get the reports as much unless it comes through the hospital or something like that. Obviously, I do believe and I have seen like the trend is, you know, drugs and mental health, and sometimes they're interrelated, are kind of the recipe that we see that causes almost all crimes, besides drug crimes just being what they do to people and being an offense, a criminal offense. But we see that in, you know, thefts, we see that in robberies, burglaries, whatever we might see. And so, you know, that opioid and just, you know, methamphetamine and now fentanyl abuse is really still it's just having a savage effect on actually hurting and killing people.
Right, and it seems like the school districts, I know I've seen a lot of activity on social media in the Lansing School District about parents and teachers and staff being very concerned about fentanyl, to the point where I think they're having some special meetings about it. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing Leavenworth City School District is concerned about the same things. Is that, just to recap, is that the number one problem you're facing right now in terms of enforcement and protection?
You know, one of the number one things, the most that we see, and this is because kind of the way our office is situated, we get every crime in the entire county dealing with domestic violence. And so, and generally, like all the other misdemeanors and such, they go to the municipalities. So Lansing has its, you know, DUI court and batteries and things like that, and similar to Leavenworth, Baser, Tonganoxie. But so we do see the most of probably domestic cases, but generally the domestic cases, they relate to some type of alcohol or drug abuse. Usually they might be overly intoxicated or using drugs when we see domestic incident. So yeah, drugs I think is always the paramount issue, and generally the issue of what we see crimes, you know.
Yeah, the catalyst.
The catalyst,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. All right. I know I've seen you make the case to the county commissioners that you need more support in terms of staff. A couple months ago, I remember you being up there. Currently, is your staffing sufficient? And I realize you have to kind of be careful with the answer to that. But both in terms of admin staff and legal staff, do you have enough people to get the job done?
We do have enough people to get the job done. One of the interesting things that's happened since COVID, it shut down the courts for almost 2 years. Now, we were able to do certain things in the past year where we were able to start doing jury trials again. With that shutdown, it caused a backlog, and we already had a little bit of backlog because of some of the judicial, you know, and continuances and things like that the defense will ask for, but when COVID hit, it shut down everything for that, plus the 2 years that we couldn't do trials. And so that just kept building and building and building. It didn't stop crime. Like I said, crime's been going down, but we're still, you know, we're still receiving a bulk of reports.
Sure.
And doing that we were trying to get them filed, but you don't have anything that can progress. And then all of a sudden we hit this bubble where, you know, we can start doing more, but we need more. And as most people have seen nationally in our community, we aren't getting the numbers to work. The other things that in the legal community and the law enforcement community, what we're seeing is people aren't going into the profession like they used to. Whether it's the negative stigma that we've seen with being law enforcement, or even prosecution, or the concern about it, we're not seeing that. The other thing that we're seeing nationally as well as locally is there is a downward trend of people wanting to become lawyers. The interest rate into KU, Washburn, UMKC, which is where I primarily have hired attorneys from, they're seeing half of what they used to, half of when I went to law school. And because of that, civil firms who can pay a lot more than the state are hiring them. Chief Justice, Kansas Supreme Court Chief Justice Marla Luckert gave her presentation to the legislature a couple months ago, and in that presentation she said there's first-year law students that are making as much as she is, just coming right out of law school. And so you can imagine the difficulty of one of these first-year law students who may want to make a difference, but saying, "Hey, I'm going to go work
Right.
for such a large cut in salary to do so." And it's not that we aren't finding that, but the other thing I think we noticed through COVID is that many people were deciding to retire, you know? And so we see that in all professions, including law and law enforcement. They kind of want to, you know, oh, I need to live my life, and you know, and I think people need to do that. And so one of the things that, you know, I also faced was a need for more attorneys to actually do as many trials. They had the courts had decided to start double, if not tripling up trials. They had maybe 6 or 7 trials for us every week, and I had basically 5 attorneys to do it because we were having trouble hiring anybody. And so we would have attorneys that would have to be prepared for a trial, and then the very next week prepared for a next trial and prepare for next trial. And honestly, I had some judges suggest that maybe we should try to dismiss or plea down cases a lot more. And that just goes completely against my sensibilities. Because everybody has a right to the case, and I've always made a very steadfast want to try to do the best of what the victims want with the cases, but also what is best for the community and best for the case. And in doing so, that does not mean just getting rid of a case because we have a lot of cases. That meant we were going to trial, and we have been, and we're just being inundated with trial after trial after trial. And there's just, I mean, no matter who you are, you know, preparing and then preparing again, then preparing again. It was daunting and difficult, and we're still dealing with that, coupled with, like I said, we still had to file cases that were coming in. And so it's been a real slow go. We haven't, you know, had the person power that we would want, but it hasn't stopped us from still being effective. Similarly, I do have like 2 big holes opening up. I have two of my staff people who've been with the office for 35 plus years, and they're both retiring this year. One's retiring this month. The institutional knowledge that they have and the skill level they have is just insurmountable. But we've been able to hire some people that they're helping train. Luckily, they gave us enough time to tell us they're leaving. But, you know, so I lost a lot of people in that respect. Still struggle to get attorneys. I'm hoping to have 2 more by mid-year and really have us going. One of the other things that our Office of Judicial Administration of the state of Kansas has done, they've done 2 things to my office, and all offices really, but to the county they added an additional judge. And now that could be a good thing to some respect because you can get cases going faster, but it's just like a water faucet. You know, if you have just a dribble and then you add another judge, now you have more, which means now I need more attorneys in court. I don't have them downstairs filing cases. It causes more work for my office, more paperwork for my staff, and so we're still dealing with the newness. The second thing that the court, the Office of Judicial Administration, OJA, has done for us is it has instituted a statewide computer program called Odyssey. Odyssey has not been great for us to work with prosecutors. They didn't take prosecutors in mind when they implemented the program. And so we have a whole new computer program that we just started. We're the largest so far that they've instituted in the state, and they're moving on next to the next 5 larger counties. But it has been complicated, and it has made us go back to more data entry than we've had before. And so that slowed us down a little bit. We're hoping within the next year that's going to be rectified too, but it's just going to be a tough year for the office.
Sure. Maybe branching out a little bit, how critical is cooperation between counties? And, you know, criminals don't observe county lines. And I'm asking that from, like, do you share intelligence with your Wyandotte County counterpart, your Douglas County counterpart? Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, and it's, you're the county attorney, you worry about the county, but are there situations where you need to talk to your counterparts to kind of get ahead of certain things?
Well, I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm a past president of the Kansas County and District Attorneys Association, and I'm still their legislative liaison. And one of the things that membership in that group has caused me a really close connection with all the elected officials that border us and throughout the state. Similarly, I know the prosecutors on the Missouri side.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually limited in what information we can give to each other.
Okay.
And the computer access at this point in time is still limited to what the information we have. But fortunately, when there is charges, we usually can find out if they have warrants in other counties, and that does allow us to kind of see what they're doing with the case and what we're doing with the case. But in conversations, similar like you were asking me what trends they're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
We kind of discuss those of what effect, but like specific people or things like that, we don't usually get down to the nuts and bolts, and we don't usually do any of that until we have a case and see what the case is. So.
Okay. All right. Lastly, I guess let's end it on a good note. Some good news stories that you can tell us that involve the county attorney's office. You and I are friends on Facebook, so I see you out and about. And a lot of times it's, smiling faces. So anything that pops up now that's currently going on that people would get a smile over.
Well, you know what? I'm hoping that one of the biggest things that we started, and one of the reasons why they said they instituted a new judge into our county, into our judicial district, is that we started a veterans treatment court.
Okay.
Veterans treatment court, and we're looking for volunteers, retired military volunteers. But what this court, and they have shown through multiple studies, and I've seen it myself through Johnson County, and I like to say I've been trying to get this court started for almost 10 years, but we finally have a judge who's on board, who's
Mm-hmm.
willing to do it, and we have the right people really pushing forward that we got this court, and it's for lower level crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Generally ones that have no victims, so usually drug related. If it has anything victim related, we don't do anything without the victim's permission. We haven't had that yet. Right now is kind of drug related, alcohol related, like DUIs, traffic, or things like that, where they really need someone to help them and hold their hand a little bit.
The offender has to be a veteran.
And
okay.
And people misunderstand sometimes when they talk about veteran. That just means you've served in the military.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you actually have had to serve like in combat, just whether you've served or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have that, and again, we would like to have a specialty for more options to help people out. And we've been looking at other, mental health
Mm-hmm.
and a drug court, at least a juvenile drug court. But right now, we're just taking the baby steps because, like I said, it's taken 10 years to get anything.
Right.
And this Veterans Court, thanks to Senator Jerry Moran for getting us some grant money, because it takes that to give incentives to help them, and some of the incentives can be gas money just to get to the courthouse. Maybe food money, some types of carrots more than sticks,
Right.
and to be able to help them. And what the mentors basically are, it's kind of similar to what you've seen, seen in like AA, or you hear about in AA, is they're a person that they can call and say, hey, we've had shared experience, we know what it's like to be in the military, we know, what we've gone through,
Support system.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they might not have that, or they might have that with their family, but they need someone who can give them a little tough love or something on side. And this court is built to let them, understanding that they'll fall down a little bit more, and give them a chance to get back up. And the idea is that people who have served might have some trauma from the work they have done, especially if they were in combat, that they might need that extra assistance. And so we're really hoping that this program will be a success, because I think a lot of times people think about prosecutors as, we just want them behind bars. We want the serious ones, we want the repeat offenders, we want the ones harming the community. But in reality, what we want to see is we want to see people, if they fall down or they screw up, and we have that understanding that they might, that they can pick themselves back up, and that they can continue to move forward and kind of be a benefit to the community and bring back to a family. I mean, I can tell you as someone who has had family members with drug abuse, it doesn't just hurt the person, it hurts the entire family. And everybody gets wrecked by it, the kids, the loved ones, and what we want to do is be able to bring that person back to who they were, who we knew they were before that dependency. And so that's kind of one of the things that I'm excited to see, and it's just getting started. And we only have a few applicants this far, and we hope to progress. I know that the Community Corrections Office has started a Youth Justice Resource Center, and that's another program that is there to not only assist juveniles who are having dependency problems and education problems and things like that, to ensure that they can get back on their feet and graduate and do well. But it also helps with the whole family dynamics, and so we're kind of excited about that program, or we are excited about that program. Another thing that we kind of done, and this is, again, another feel good that we're kind of happy about, or we are happy about, is we've had our expungement event. We hadn't had one since 2019. We were probably the second in the state to do one of these events. And basically, defense attorneys would donate their time to people who were eligible for expungements. And what I mean by expungement means that they've had a conviction, but they have done their probation, they successfully completed everything they have, and after a certain amount of time, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 10 years, whatever it might be that the statute allows, they can get an expungement. And generally, for a person who has to get expungement, they have to end up paying attorney's fees, and it could be up to thousands of dollars to be able to get everything expunged, court costs to get that expunged and all that.
Get it off the record.
Get it off the record. Make it a clean slate. That I mean, certain law enforcement will know, certain jobs will know, but for most part, they don't have a record anymore. And this is really for people who have cleaned up and really have moved on. And the real benefit about this is the jobs that they can get, the housing that they could be eligible for, loans they can get, education they can get. And a lot of these people who have, I've succeeded, I'm not doing drugs, I've moved past, my life is clean, that was behind me, I screwed up, I got caught, I'm a better person. And we were doing these events to save them money, because again, they have been hamstrung by having the conviction to be able to afford. And so hopefully by doing these events, hopefully yearly, if not bi-yearly, that we can help people become even more successful and give back to our community. So that's been another really big thing that I've been happy to be a part of. Sometimes there's a little negative stigma, because I know some people think once you've been convicted, it should be with you forever. But seeing it and seeing people move on and getting stopped in the community and people telling me, and I can remember one story. An 84-year-old man came in, and he had a conviction from, I believe, the 70s, and he came into our office. He didn't understand, because usually we did the paperwork on the computer, and they would submit it. He didn't understand how to do it, and he was like, "Can someone help me?" And we were able to provide him one of the free counsel during the event. He goes. And he came in, we told him he was eligible, he could get it expunged, and he started crying. He was like, I wanted to die knowing that I had a clean record, and everybody knew that I put this thing past me. And nothing had happened for 30 years, but, and so, those little things, and seeing that is, kind of one of the things I've been really happy to be a part of.
All right. I've been speaking with Leavenworth County Attorney Todd Thompson for Movers and Shakers. I'm Ken Miller.